Hello everyone. Before we start the video, I would like to thank today's sponsor, Delimex Taquitos. Delimex wanted me to show off the convenience of eating their taquitos while participating in some Overwatch challenges on a recent stream, feeding me some kills as I feasted upon their taquitos. They're a super easy snack to prep while you're playing, so you can stay fueled up for play sessions instead of forgetting that it's been 7 hours and the most you've had to eat today was nothing. Definitely not talking about myself. They also passed out some coupons to my stream viewers for free boxes of taquitos, which was pretty cool of them to do. Check out Delimex.com for more information on their taquitos and where to buy them. And thank you very much to Delimex for sponsoring that stream and the video. It is the end of Season of Plunder, the end of Season 18. And as we do, it is time to reflect on this past season, go over some of the highlights and the lowlights, and discuss how we're feeling about it all. Let's start with the story. This season had us fighting off Aramis for 8 MacGuffins, artifacts, to go get week over week. Aramis wants the artifacts to hopefully gain power to restore the strength of her people. The Witness wants her to retrieve them. We also got to know a bit more about Mithrax and his less than stellar past and the relationship he has with the Eliksni and the artifacts. Ido, a newer character, Mithrax's daughter, initially does not know about her father's past and his history with the relics and who he was as a Eliksni. I don't want to say person because that seems weird. But starts to find out more over the course of the season, which causes her to reduce communication with him. Ido is also trying to meet with Aramis to talk about the artifacts and figure out a different way about dealing with the artifacts and Aramis trying to get them. The season ultimately ends with Aramis getting beaten in a fight with Mithrax, but she dips away on her ship after Mithrax chooses to spare her life as opposed to killing her, which he likely would have done in his old life. Aramis had actually saved Ido from the Lucent Hive before Mithrax ends up seeing this event happen, though. Mithrax seems to want to harness the power of the artifacts, but the Curse of Nezarec, as it is discovered, is rumored to be not so great for the user of the artifacts. It turns out that these artifacts are pieces of Nezarec, who you may know as someone who has a lot of in-game loot named after them. Nezarec led the Witness's first attack on Earth, according to secondhand accounts, which we know as the Collapse, one of the biggest events of the lore of the entire franchise. The Witness likely wanted these artifacts to do more collapse stuff, perhaps reviving Nezarec. I don't really know. I'm not a doctor. I think the main issue that I and most people ended up having with this story this season is that it felt like a filler episode. In the first couple of weeks, I was a bit skeptical at what my interest would be. A couple weeks later, I started getting a bit more interested. Things are ramping up. But by the end, I ended up getting pretty tuned out. This is especially because of how things ended in the story mission, with Aramis getting her butt kicked, getting mad about it, and then just piecing the hell out. Aramis also never really felt like a huge fan favorite in the community as far as villains go. She's no Callus, she's no Savathun. She felt like a character that probably should have been done at the end of Beyond Light. I don't feel like many people cared that much about Aramis, so it was tough to get excited about her. I think if people had liked Aramis from the Beyond Light campaign, then maybe there's some more excitement there, but yeah, people just did not really care about Aramis. It feels like the big reveal was supposed to be the revelation that Nezarec is involved and we're collecting pieces of him and all this kind of stuff, but Nezarec, for most people anyway, has existed pretty much in name only, on the names of in-game items. I'm sure lore masters can tell me all about Nezarec and all the books he's been in, and I watched some videos while preparing this one, so I know a bit more now. But in terms of what's been shown in-game, it's pretty much just been items and then some voice lines this season. So that reveal didn't really feel like it hit as hard as it maybe should have. Then you had the whole relationship between Aramis, Ido, Mithrax as a whole, finding their identity, character development, will they become friends kind of a deal. But I just don't think the interest was there for a lot of people. I think another thing is that since we're getting so close to the end of this saga of the game, people are mainly interested in the main story, and anything that doesn't feel like it has to do with the main story feels like filler. Even though there's a chance that this season's events, the artifacts being linked to Nezarec, are attached to the main story overall. It doesn't feel like it while we're in the moment. There's a decent chance we gather all these artifacts only to try to use them in the future. Maybe something goes wrong, maybe something goes right, who knows? If Nezarec had been a character brought up in the game in the past, outside of just armor and weapons, in a more narrative sense, maybe people would have cared more. But to those who just play the story and don't really read too much more into things, this season for them was get the MacGuffins, fight off Aramis, see you next season, which I can understand not being very exciting. I also saw some comments about the writing this season being not as good and some gripes about the pirate theming. Writing is not something I really pay attention to nearly as much as other things, so if you want to discuss that in the comments, feel free. I am not the guy for analysis of video game writing, and I never will be. As for the pirate theme and some of the silliness from that during the season, it didn't really bother me as much. As I said at the start of the season, if Bungie wants to make a couple of NPC names into puns or whatever, that's not going to completely destroy my immersion. Now, if you come out with Eris in a pirate outfit saying, "Arr, me fire team died to Crota," then yeah, that's where you're going to lose me. Let's move on to gameplay. The story missions were not the most thrilling, typically serving as a vehicle to just get to some dialogue. Each weekly quest chunk consisted of do the seasonal activity, now go do the other one, and then do the hideout where the artifact is, of which the hideouts were old lost sectors that were removed from the game via content vaulting that were repurposed into these missions. I got no problem with Bungie reusing old lost sectors, but the missions themselves were really short and were basically the same and really didn't get me that excited. I definitely enjoyed the Sever missions more than these. These were basically just vehicles to get to the story. The seasonal activities were Catch, Crash, and Expedition. Catch Crash is as good of a seasonal activity as I think we can get in this era of the game. Big set pieces, multiple rooms with multiple objectives, pretty good enemy density, rotating bosses. It was pretty solid as far as a seasonal activity goes. Sure, it's no menagerie, but I think those days are behind us. As it usually goes, though, people do get tired of running the seasonal activity after doing it X many times, and it does eventually wear out its welcome to little fault of its own. Expedition, on the other hand, was not as exciting and a bit more frustrating. Enemy density was okay, but the slowness of collecting treasure and then moving to the next destination hold it back a bit. And then we had the Ruffian problem. Ruffians were needed in order to complete the seasonal title. You needed 50 Ruffian kills. But they spawned on a timer as opposed to a certain percentage of treasure collected, which meant that you needed to intentionally go slow to spawn a Ruffian. And if there's one thing the Destiny community does not like in a challenge or a triumph, it is intentionally having to hold themselves back or having to compete with their teammates to get things done. Even with a fix to their spawning systems halfway through the season, these were still very obnoxious to go for in order to get the title. And Traveler bless you if you're one of the poor souls who wanted all the triumphs, because one of the triumphs this season requires 250 champion kills in Expedition. That is a yikes from me. Also, it's felt like each of the seasonal titles this year have felt a bit more grindy than in the past. In the previous year of seasons, it felt like as long as I was participating somewhat actively in a season, by the time that final time gate had come down, I was getting the seasonal title like on that day, maybe save for one or two very small things that I just needed to clean up. This season felt pretty grindy when it came to the title. Could I just be playing less? Sure. Was I maybe not paying attention as much? That was maybe the case, but my season rank as of the writing of this script is like 206, which is pretty in line with my XP progression compared to seasons from the past, if not more so. I only just got to 9 out of 10 on last season's title, now having to wait for these random Leviathan events to spawn in. Just very grindy for what feels like no reason other than to keep you logged in for more hours. Is part of this my own fault in wanting all of the titles and all those triumphs? Yeah, maybe, but they just didn't feel this bad in the past. Hi, it's me, but from the future, but also still the past. Bungie has dramatically reduced the amount of things needed to grind for this title now. Ruffians are down to 10 from 50. The vendor upgrades are down to only 14 needed. You only need to summon your first mates 1 time versus 15 times, and you only need 8 out of the now 9 triumphs. While nice, I do think this is a rather large overcorrection. Some grinding is fine, I don't mind that, but the requirements now are quite low. Bungie has acknowledged that certain triumphs were overtuned and the title was harder to get than intended. Hopefully this will apply for future seasons as well. I don't want them to be pathetically easy, but also not as mind-numbing as they have been lately. I'm guessing they nuked the requirements for this season to allow people to actually get the title completed. All right, back to the past. Seasonal currencies also made a return in map fragments and treasure coordinates. This is not really a feature I was fond of after having 2 seasons in a row where currencies either didn't exist and or we had so much of it that it basically did not matter. Now granted, the only time I really experienced this problem was when I was grinding out Umbral Energy for, you guessed it, a seasonal triumph, but I only experienced the problem because I was actually playing the seasonal activities for longer than like 30 to 45 minutes at a time. Plundered Umbral Energy was also pretty scarce, or what felt like pretty scarce. Red border weapon grinding was yet another issue this season for a lot of players, with things starting very slowly before Bungie ramped the speed up a bit. The 7x3 grid of upgrades also returned, but again, this is not something that really engaged me and really drove me to participate that much. There's a lot of cutting the middleman stuff that I think needs to happen in seasons going forward. Some of these things used to be novelties, but they've worn out their welcome, and now they just feel like they're getting in the way versus being a thing I want to indulge in. Arc 3.0 was a rather significant part of the Sandbox this season, with Titans getting one of the strongest builds the game has ever seen with their Heart of Inmost Light Touch of Thunder build, despite 2 of their 3 aspects revolving more around PvP type gameplay. Hunters got a new super and also have access to a pretty strong melee playstyle, although it is somewhat high risk, high reward. Meanwhile, Warlocks have been left in the dust a bit when it comes to Arc power, with not a lot of endgame build potential. Bungie is looking to remedy that in Season 19 with a big buff to Arc Soul. I'm skeptical that this will push Warlock into endgame territory though, at least with Arc, but we'll see. The seasonal artifacts this season left a bit to be desired though. The premier mods were supposed to be Lightning Strikes Twice and Trace Evidence, but Lightning Strikes Twice was not a significant difference maker in most builds, and Trace Evidence wasn't even labeled correctly for half the season, meaning trying to proc it in the way that it said to proc it wasn't working because you actually had to do something else. I will say that it was nice making some builds that did not rely on seasonal artifacts, because it means those builds have staying power, but some of the fun of a new season definitely comes from finding ways to go absolutely insane with seasonal artifacts. When it came to weaponry, we had our standard suite of crafted weapons, although it did feel like it took a bit longer to get some of these patterns, as I mentioned. The perk of the season is Volt Shot, which came on the Scout, the Sidearm, and the Linear Fusion. This perk is very strong, but it ended up getting outshined by the ability Sandbox itself. Arc Titans were so strong that you didn't even need to shoot weapons in Grandmaster content except having to stun champions. If abilities ever come down in power and we go back to having to use guns to kill things again, I think Volt Shot is going to be a very, very strong selection. Plank's Stride, the machine gun, is probably the weakest link out of the bunch, but otherwise we got some pretty not too bad weapons this season. Cry Mutiny was the seasonal ritual weapon, a grenade launcher that shoots cannonballs instead of grenades, which I thought was kind of cute, but it still functions like a grenade launcher, and it was fine because grenade launchers are not really in the meta right now. Delicate Tomb was the exotic of the season, a fusion rifle which blends pretty well with Arc builds, and I thought was a pretty good weapon overall. Ionic Traces will feed you some ability energy, and this thing also gets Volt Shot to proc when you collect an Ionic Trace. I haven't really experimented damage-wise or anything like that with this weapon, but it's definitely a gun that fits nicely into ARC builds, whether it's weapon-based or ability-based. King's Fall is the second D1 raid to come into D2, and I thought Bungie did an excellent job with this reprisal, much like VOG, maybe even better. The mechanics were updated to D2 standards, but still feel true to the original, and Bungie even included some fan favorites like Unstable Light hurting Golgoroth and actually damaging Oryx, and best of all, no more one orb strat, although Golgoroth just kind of falls over pretty quickly anyway. Most of the weapons from the raid are pretty good too, and they brought back the original gear. I don't really have much else to say on it. Like, it's good, other than I am literally a Kingslayer and still don't have Touch of Malice as of the writing of this video, which should literally never happen. If you have the raid title and you don't have the exotic should be given to you from earning the title. Let's cut the crap already. Festival of the Lost made a return this season. I did a full video breakdown on Festival of the Lost, but to summarize, it is an event designed to sell microtransactions and to be a silly little thing in-game to celebrate Halloween. It is not meant to be a grand scale event, especially a free one. I know that there is the event pass, which is paid, but that just gets you some cosmetics. You don't need to purchase it. That doesn't mean it's clear from criticism, though, and my biggest gripe was easily getting the title. 35 haunted sectors was about 10 to 15 too many sectors. Did not need to be 35. The 30,000 candy also felt a bit excessive, but that's for gilding, so especially since all you could do with candy was buy grab bags of garbage that you dismantled immediately, but because I was grinding Master Nightfalls and getting exotics and currencies, it didn't feel as bad because it wasn't just candy that I was getting. Had I not cared about getting the title, I would have done a little bit of it, maybe got all the free cosmetics that were on offer, and then I would have tapped out, which is likely what most people ended up doing. There was also a small Telesto sort of event thing that happened in mid-November. During a reset, Telesto's animations and firing pattern changed with it being broken and you having to hold a button to fix it. It also ended up becoming one of the best weapons for trials during that time, thanks to the changes that they made. While everyone was panicking, thinking that a new secret mission was on the horizon, I spent my time playing the new God of War on my couch. And what ended up happening? Nothing. It was just meant to be a small gag of having Telesto go rogue and take over social media for a bit, take over some in-game screens, and just have a laugh. Oh, Telesto, you crazy weapon. You always break when things happen. And there's also an emblem. This did not please the people. Because as what usually happens, people go berserk whenever Bungie hints at there being any sort of a secret anything. Even when Bungie literally says there is no secret anything. And I think the reason people got annoyed with this is because we have not had a secret mission or a secret event in quite a long time. So when these things do pop up, people think, oh my god, oh man, finally, we're getting another mission. Oh my god, what's gonna happen? When in reality, we're not. An engineer for the game posted on Reddit and basically said that the game is not built in a way that really supports building secret missions in the first place, even the ones in the past, I assume. They didn't exactly say that they're never going to make one again, though. However, two factors that go into the lack of secret missions, I'm assuming, is one, they're incredibly expensive to make for what end up being one-off events, and two, data miners ruin these secrets anyway. So if you're going to spend thousands of employee hours to make a secret thing, chances are it's just going to get discovered and ruined anyway. So why bother? Which makes total sense. You know, I get it. It is disappointing to not really be getting any secret missions anymore, but I sort of understand why. If you worked, 200 hours on a project only for some random to spoil all of your work, would you be stoked? Probably not. Finally, there is a community event happening around the time this video is coming out, where we are going to be upgrading the Eliksni quarters. I am not anticipating this to be anything revolutionary, as the event will revolve around collecting Captain's Coins, which are from Destination Chess, Lost Sectors, Public Events, Catch Crash, Expedition, King's Fall, Dares, Strikes, Crucible, and Gambit. So you know, from playing the game. There will be a ghost shell to collect, and as we collect more and more coins, global community rewards will be given out. If I do end up having more to say on this, I will make an individual video before the end of the season. So yet again, we find ourselves in the yearly Destiny rut. The third season of an expansion cycle. Splicer didn't feel as bad, although Worthy certainly did. People are burnt out, fatigued, just exhausted with the game as we hit the holiday season and there are new games to play. For a lot of people, burnout on the seasonal model is really starting to show. Those who are more active on the game maybe aren't getting as much out of the similar layout of seasons or seasonal content. I don't care that much about Catch Crash. It's not the thing that gets my blood pumping. And for a lot of other active players, that's starting to become the case. The activity changes, but the pace stays the same. The format stays the same. We have been in the same cadence for years. The grindier than usual past couple of seasons certainly haven't helped. Triumphs and weapon pattern acquisition further extending playtime, but with no real good feeling coming from it. There's not much of an accomplished feeling from these things. It's more like, oh my god, I'm finally done. I could do something else. I'm very burnt out on the seasonal model offerings, if that hasn't shown already in content I've done recently, both videos and streams, or the lack of content I have done recently. I want to both criticize things in a season about the seasonal model. I got plenty of things to say, as you just heard. But I also want to realize that it's still just $10 for a season, and based on everything that we get, $10 is still not that big of an ask, as an active Destiny player anyway. It's a weird spot to be. I think a lot of middleman things need to be cut down. We had the limited currencies last season. Vestiges of Dread felt like a non-factor, and in Season of the Risen, there were no currencies at all. I don't think we need these currencies limiting how often we can do something or obtain rewards from certain activities. I get that one is supposed to lead into the other, but if you put stuff in my way, at this point, I just don't think I'm going to bother. Obviously, this speaks to leveling for Grandmasters as well, which is a can of worms I've opened before, but it's not the easiest problem to solve. I wouldn't mind seeing some sort of dynamic scaling where the more often you've been a conqueror, the less you have to grind to get back into GMs. Like, oh, now you only need 10 levels from your season thing. Oh, now you don't need to be at the pinnacle cap. Like, whatever, you know, stuff like that. I actually did not have a huge issue leveling up this season. This was maybe me having some decent RNG. I don't know. But I feel like in 2 or 3 weeks of just doing my normal raid pinnacles with some other minor pinnacles thrown in on the side, I was done. I didn't really try that hard. You know, we'll see if it's like that next season. I am just tired of going through the motions. That's what things feel like on the game right now. Just going through the motions. But after this long, that's just what it's going to feel like without some very significant retooling and revamps. You play a game for that long, I don't care how you've been playing, it's going to feel samey. This season was yet another season in a list of seasons. Fatigue has set in and stayed for a while now. This next season should probably excite people again as we get closer and closer to a new expansion. While the jump in quality from Beyond Light to Witch Queen was very noticeable, I'm worried about that Witch Queen back to seasonal content whiplash for Lightfall. But for $10 every 3 months, can we really expect more? If they charged more, what could they deliver for that money, and would it still ever be enough for a community that is always going to be insatiable for more? I don't know. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.